Can you hear me? Good. Okay, we are on. Wonderful. It's great to be with you one more time. I think this is my third or fourth visit to you, and the second or third time I preach to you. So I bring you greetings from the Southern California, Nevada Conference. As your conference minister, I represent all the other 143 churches that comprise this conference. So it's wonderful to go around and visit all our churches in Southern California and Nevada and bring you greetings in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. I want to ask you a question. Actually, I have three things I'm going to say to you today, and one of them is a sermon. So hang in there with me. How many of you like vanilla ice cream? How many of you like chocolate ice cream? How many of you like vanilla and chocolate ice cream? How many of you like garlic ice cream? Yeah, there's such a thing. How many of you like chocolate bacon cake? Cool. How many of you think you don't like garlic ice cream? Oh, you won't like chocolate bacon cake? Okay. If I were to ask you to go to a store with me and buy ice cream, and I'll buy garlic ice cream and you buy chocolate or vanilla, will you go to the store with me and sit down and eat that? That's how I used to explain to my church the different kinds of music in the church. Some of us like vanilla, some of us like chocolate, some of us like garlic. If you're like me, you try them all. You know, I am a child caught between generations. I am second generation boomer, first generation Gen X. So I love traditional music, and I love what the youth did today. And I feel God in both, and I don't have a problem either way. But it's not right or wrong, it's like it or not like it. And if you don't like it, it's great. If you like it, it's great too. And that's a wonderful great about the realm of God, that we all have a place. And we can all worship there. And God calls us to sit at the table together as member of God's family. So you have been a wonderful congregation this morning, working with our youth and listening to different music that you probably are not accustomed to. And finding that God moves in the midst of all that. So that's the number one thing. The second thing I've been tasked to mention to you that June 28th through July the 2nd next year, the United Church of Christ will be in Long Beach. I mean, the entire United Church of Christ will be in Long Beach to celebrate the 29th General Synod. This is a major event, happens every 2 years, and we are the host conference. We will have over 3,500 delegates in Long Beach and about 5,000 people. And guess what? We need volunteers. We need volunteers. We are actively recruiting volunteers to help us anywhere from telling people which hotels they need to go, to help us driving vans, to help us with programs, and we have a job for everyone. Even people who want to pray during that week, we will recruit you for that, and our local arrangements committee is actively seeking for volunteers. This morning I have a sign-up sheet with me, and I'll be down there with the bubbles and the donuts, and if you are interested, I will have my sign-up sheet with me, so if you can give me your information, we will have your local arrangements committee contact you and see where you can help us. This is a wonderful event. Our volunteers, we pay for your registration to General Synod, which is about close to $200. So that our conference will pay for that, or at least reimburse you for that, so it will be no out-of-cost expense for you. So we recognize your time and your efforts, and I will leave you our beautiful poster. The theme for this General Synod is God's Vision, which means you can put anything you want after that. God's Vision. And I'll leave that with you so you are reminded. So that's number 2. Now to the task that I was invited here to do. I understand some of you have been reading the book Crazy Kinfolk. And guess what? I got stuck with a chapter that has to do with grief and loss. We'll see how we can get through that one. Shortly after I retired from the U.S. Navy as a chaplain in 2003, I went to work as a hospice chaplain for 2 years. And during that period, I learned about loss and grief. I was blessed and honored to walk with families and folks as they made the transition into the next life. And I learned a lot about my own mortality. And that was the first time in my entire life that I made peace with the fact that one day, sooner or later, I will also cross the bridge. And that there's no matter how much I run, no matter how much I hide, I will die one day. And and I was okay with that. I was okay with that. I tell people that if my life were to end today, I would have had a good run. And I had accomplished most everything I wanted to accomplish in my life. So I am at peace with that. But the truth is that, loss and suffering and death and grief are things that we hate to talk about. I mean, we really don't. When you sit down around the table with your friends or having a beer somewhere, I don't think that subject is the one that you choose to talk about. We live in a culture that worships life and strength and energy. And if you are a boomer, you don't think you're ever going to die. And we try to look younger. We do all kinds of things to our bodies, including stretching our skin, and because we don't want to look old. And we want to remain young. Because we have told that getting old or dying is not a good thing. We also have been taught in this culture that suffering has no value. So when I read Paul's reading, we read this morning, when Paul says, and suffering produces all these great things, and I go, yeah, right. Because we have been told that suffering is a waste of time. We really should not suffer in this life. It has no purpose. For that reason, from early childhood, we learn that if it hurts, there's a pill for that. If we're in pain, we can take it away. If we are uncomfortable, we should not feel uncomfortable. There's something out there that will make the feeling of being uncomfortable go away. And that's what we are being taught. But the truth of the matter is that we experience suffering, loss, and pain all the time. It doesn't have to be just death. Recently, Sherry and I went to a really tough situation in our lives that had nothing to do with our jobs or our personal lives, just things that happen. And we were experiencing exactly the same symptoms you will experience when somebody dies in the family. Going through the whole grief process. And that's part of our daily lives. When you lose a job, you experience grief. When you lose a friendship, you experience grief. When you move to another place, you experience grief. When you lose a pet, you experience grief. And so on and so forth. And when facing painful situations, sometimes the first thing we do is ask, why? Isn't it? When something really bad happens in our lives, the first question that comes to our minds is, why is this happening to me? In the Old Testament, the book of Job tells us of a man who was righteous before God and lost everything. And he was asking why, himself why, and asking God why. And in the Old Testament, the mentality was that if you were a righteous person, you're a good person, you do no wrong to anyone, you're a good churchgoer, if something wrong happened to you, was because you or somebody in your family had sinned. In other words, you done something wrong and this is God's punishment. How many of you grew up believing that? That if something happened in your life, it was God's punishment. No, stop. Yeah, I grew up that way. And the truth is that bad things happen to good people. And asking why will never give us the right answer. Because some things have no explanation. But you know, we rush to give that why. For example, I heard someone tell somebody else whose mother had died of cancer. He said, well, you know, cancer runs in the family, so sooner or later, she might have gotten it. Oh, thank you. The best one I heard on the answer of why was at a funeral of a 6-year-old girl. The pastor tells the parents, you should feel comfort in the fact that God needed one more angel for his choir. Really? What kind of God is that? But the truth is that we try to answer the question why. It has to be an explanation. It has to make sense. The challenge is that most of the time, loss and grief makes absolutely no sense at all. So the question that we should answer when those things happen is not as much why, but what can I do with it? Where do I go from here? Is God still walking by my side? During the shootings in Aurora last few weeks, I heard a pastor of a church said that was God's will. And I sat there and going like, what kind of God is that? Really? Other people go like, no, it was the devil was involved. Really? What about people? What about crazy people who do crazy things? Where is my sense of responsibility in all this? But I do believe that God is in the midst of suffering. God is present with us. God is comforting us. God is giving us peace. God is walking with us, crying with us. Sometimes angry too at what's happening at us. At least that's how I see grief, pain, and loss in my life. I also learned a long time ago that it is through my deepest pain, grief, and loss that I become the most creative. Actually, there are some studies that prove that creativity rises in the middle of loss, grief, and pain. For some reason, our creative juices get flowing. People write beautiful poetry and music in the middle of loss and pain. People paint. People create new things. So in that regard, pain is necessary, for lack of a better word, so we can let our creative juices flow. But in the meantime, as we go through all the phases of grief, and you know them all, do you? You know, first one is You say, no, this is not happening. Actually, the first one is, why me? Then, no, this is not happening. And you go on until you say, oh, finally I understand, and there's nothing I can do with this. You get angry. What do we do in the middle of that, all that? I think one of the beauties of being part of a community of faith is we have one another. And it's in that process of loss and pain that we can reach out to one another, to ask for a shoulder to cry on, somebody to hear us out. And I will encourage you that if anyone comes to you in the middle of loss and pain and grief, don't give an answer. Don't try to make it better. Don't try to patch it up, because you'll make it worse. Just be present and listen. Hold the person. Cry with the person. If the person asks for advice, don't give any. Really, don't. It's not your problem to solve. That's the first thing we try to do. Just bite your lip and say, you know, please don't say, I know what you feel. Please don't say what you feel. Because you don't. You don't. You might have gone through different similar circumstances, but you have no idea what this person is feeling. Don't say either, oh, it's not that bad. I heard them all. I mean, I've been in ministry for 30 years. Believe me, I've heard them all. You don't know what the other person is feeling. You will never know what the other person is feeling. Now, you can say, you know, I went through a similar situation. This is what I felt when I was going there. This is how I felt. Now, I don't know if that's how you're feeling, but I'm trying to connect and trying to understand. And I know that no matter how hard I try, I will not be able to understand what you're going through. That's a great answer. And I'm here to walk with you. And I will listen to you. No, I don't have the answers. It's one of the hardest things to say, especially when you're a caregiver, you're a pastor or somebody who really cares for other people. Not having any answers is tough. It's really tough. But you know, you don't have any answers. Suffering and pain and loss are part of life. They're part of our daily life. And yes, fellow boomers, we will die one day, no matter how in shape we stay and how right we eat and how we stay away from all the wrong things that deteriorate the body. Sooner or later, we'll go. That's our reality. And it's not worrying about the day we will go, but what we will do with our lives today, what matters. It's not about worrying when my body will fall apart, but knowing that I can do something with my body today that could benefit others. I could be productive today. And I could live today as if it was my last day on this earth. And actually, throughout the scriptures, that's a recurrent theme. That the important thing is not, of course we need to take care of our bodies, because believe me, I don't want to die. I still think, I think I have things to do. But I need to remind myself that I could get in my car and not make it home. Or I can get on a plane and not make it to the place where I'm going. So for me, the important part is not to worry when, but what I'm going to do with my life today. Who am I going to touch with a word of love and care? Who am I going to help? Who am I going to build up? That's the question. and let the rest fall in place as it may. Our friends, the good news in all this is that according to Scripture, something else is waiting for us on the other side. Now, as I used to tell people when I was doing hospice, I have no clue what that looks like. But one thing I learned as a hospice chaplain is that there is something on the other side. I saw it happening. I saw people making transitions. I saw people, listen to people talking as they were making the transitions. So I'm a firm believer that my life will be transformed like Paul speaks of once I die. Where will that be? I don't know. I have a hard time believing that I'm going to be in this great place singing songs to God all my life. That sounds really boring, and an ADD guy like me will really get bored quickly on that. But I do believe that there is something. There is a transformation that occurs. And that's the reward, that's the promise as Christians that have been taught. And I tell you, I've seen it. And between you and I, it's not only for Christians alone. Yeah. I've seen atheists making the same transition. I've seen agnostics making the same transition. I've seen Jewish making the same transition. Exactly the same way. So, we don't have exclusive rights, as some people will tell you. But there is something out there for us. So that keeps me going too, the fact that my life can be transformed in a wonderful way as I continue living this life. So my friends, I hope this is not a depressing sermon, and if it is, I hope it makes you think. But I would like to encourage you to continue living your Christian life in faith, doing good to others. For you never know. You never know. And when trouble, grief, and loss comes to your life, first of all, remember that God is with you. God has not abandoned you. And there are other people that will be there to walk with you. God bless you, and thank you.